Sponge filters have been a very important part of the hobby for a long time in aquarium keeping. And these are a little bit different type of sponge filters. We're going to talk about them today at the All Aquarium Catfish Convention here in Washington right after this. Can you introduce yourself, sir?
Well, I'm Stefan Tanner, the owner of Swiss Tropicals, and we're here at the All Catfish Convention in Herndon, Virginia, and this is kind of a different crowd as always, since I'm a catfish pleco person myself. This is the meeting to go to in the United States every other year.
Oh yeah? I saw a couple of your talks. You had some talks this weekend too. What all did you speak about this weekend?
Well, one of the sort of key talks was about nutrition, because if you want to breed fish of any kind, two things really matter. One is water quality and the other is nutrition. And they're heavily related because so if you put low quality food in a tank, you can end up with a lot of waste. And so people never really think about the problem that actually filtration and feeding are closely linked.
Oh, that's true. They would be really, because if low quality food passes right through the creature and then straight into the filter and clogs it up with all the stuff they can't digest or
exactly. I mean, it's truly the problem is whatever is not digested or absorbed. If it's say protein or fats, it's going to end up in the water column one way or another, and the filter has to break it down, or you have to remove it with a water change. No matter what, it's going to be in the tank, and if it's not used, meaning turned into body tissue or energy for the fish, you just keep adding on to the bioload in the tank, and eventually you're going to end up like what happens in eutrophic lakes, where you get algae blooms and other sad things like fish dying off. We all know that as fish keepers. And
That's right. That's one of the unfortunate side effects of keeping fish is
you make mistakes and you know it quite quickly.
Tell me about these filters. How are they different from the sponge filters we remember?
Well, sort of the simple story. Let me get a lift tube here. Kind of along the motto on my website is simplicity works, meaning fewer parts the better, because if you have more parts you end up with more potential problems. The more screws you have, the more knobs and buttons and whistles, the more likely something could go wrong. So the filters are essentially based on two major parts. One is the block, the foam block, and there the quality of the foam is really central. Obviously you can get very cheap foam which literally falls apart after a few months, or you can get a high quality foam that has to be stable. This has a life expectancy of well over 10 years. All my hatchery has blocks that are well over 10 years old. So in the Porret, which is a brand product by my partner company in the US, in Germany, that's one of the parts. The other part is called a cube or jet lifter, which is essentially a modified Czech airlifter design made by a bunch of friends in Europe. And it literally, the whole thing is a foam block with something to hold it down, in this case a tile. Then the lift tube, which essentially consists of 2 or 3 parts. And you hook it up to an airline. You blow air in at the bottom, it draws water up. It's kind of nice, it's about a 1-to-4 ratio. So if you blow 10 liters of air in, you get 40 liters or 10 gallons of water coming out. And that's very, very efficient. You can buy one single large air pump and drive 200-300 tanks. And this is a medium that in an average stock tank, a filter like this lasts a good 2 months in between cleaning. And there's nothing that can fall apart. This is solid, glued to it. This simply comes out.
This is a different type of foam than you typically see in the commercial sponge filters, right?
Well, commercial sponge filters use usually polyester. Polyester foam is much cheaper than polyether. It's a different type of cross-linking. And despite the fact lots of clothing contains polyester, polyester is not stable in water. It gets hydrolyzed very quickly, and actually microorganisms eat it.
Really?
Yeah, because the cross-linking is not. That's why when polyester foam dries, it becomes hard and then crumbles.
Huh.
And that's because the cross-linking falls apart, it gets hydrolyzed. And that can't happen here because the ether cross-linking is a stable, microbiologically and chemically stable, more stable bond. So.
And this is the simple type of filter, but you also have that foam to cut in many different like pores, right?
Right. Obviously, you can make any sort of shape. You can make cartridges and put a power head on top. You can use it as a pre-filter. The really nice thing, it's extremely versatile. I mean, it can be fit to any shape. It can literally made into any shape you like. Like my manufacturer, their main customer is actually Eheim, the famous company Eheim.
Yeah.
They buy their foam from EMW in Germany.
Huh.
I can tell where it comes from. You can look it up on the website. Because I actually tell people where it comes from.
Right.
I don't hide anything. I think people have a right to know what they're buying.
Sure.
And that people, it's always funny. Some people going and try to buy it from them, and they say, "Well, we have a distributor in the U.S. Talk to him," which would be me.
Right.
Aside of the fact it would never be cost effective to ship a few pieces across the.
What are all
pond.
these little chunks? What do you use these for?
Well,
For biological?
I make so many custom projects right now, fish rooms, but also scientific setups, like whole universities build their research facilities around this. And the custom projects, since the sheets are essentially a meter by a meter, then if you build custom size, you're going to end up with lots of little scraps.
Right.
And I'm environmentally conscious. I think as long as something has a use, it shouldn't be tossed.
Sure.
And so we cut these in little pieces, and that's an ideal material for in sumps or in canister filters, in hang-on bags, and it compares well. Sort of the price per volume is about half of what the sheet costs.
Right.
Despite the fact there's actually quite a significant amount of labor going into it to cut it to pieces.
Yeah.
But I mean, the alternative is to either toss it or sell it off as pieces, but there's so many people that they don't want to fiddle with trying to cut the piece for a round canister. And so this is much easier than cutting something to fit.
Yeah.
I mean, it's doable. You can cut the thinner sheets with scissors.
Yeah, I saw you cutting this stuff yesterday, and it seems like you were able to slice right through it pretty well. So.
Well, I probably cut apart the equivalent of about 40-foot shipping containers in the last 10 years by hand. So it's a question of routine. Yeah. I mean, like in many professions, routine and experience is what makes things work easier or more efficient.
Let's talk about this display real quick.
Sure.
Now here you show many different ways in which to use this filter, both in the corner, and there are glass pieces here on the side that hold this in.
Right.
And you sell these too, right?
Correct. This is a corner filter, and you can essentially say the beginning is what people usually term a Hamburg Mattenfilter. And it's essentially a flat sheet that in a real tank would be at the end of the tank right here with the lift tube, drawing water from the back, pushing it out, and then it flows through the whole sheet back into the back space. I mean, it refills the back.
Right.
It is a huge surface. To give you an idea, in a 10-gallon tank, a 2-inch block like this is ballpark 240 cubic inches of foam.
Huh.
Sort of the most commonly available sponge filter. I'm not naming, everybody knows what I'm talking about. These round ones, they have a volume of about 93 cubic inches. So you can essentially say a block like this is ballpark 2.5 times as big as the largest of those internal filters.
Wow.
And the volume matters. The more volume you have, the more surface you have, because what counts is the surface. Contrary to popular belief, the foam doesn't really filter the water, because yes, it has a certain sieve effect, meaning it captures larger stuff.
Right.
But what really matters is the liquid stuff, the ammonia, and that needs to be converted. What the foam serves is as habitat for microorganisms that then eat the waste. So the idea is the more surface you offer them, the more you can cultivate these. It's literally like you're providing grazing area.
Right.
If you have more cows, you need more acreage. It's very simple. And the more space you offer, the more you'll be able to put bioload into a tank. And what's kind of interesting, if you do these sorts of filters in a regular sized tank, if you do it even with the smaller sponges there, you're going to have debris all around after a while.
Right.
With these, you never get that, because you have so much microorganism, they actually compete for the resource waste, because the waste actually becomes a limited resource. And
because there's so many of them to eat.
Yes, because you offer more surface than, unless you put bucket loads of fish food in, then obviously you can overdo it. You're in any case. Yeah, but
challenge accepted.
The trick is really to offer as much grazing potential as possible. Then or I shouldn't say grazing, because it's not really, nobody eats the bacteria, but the bacteria eat the stuff, that resource in the water. And that really gets it going. And the corner filter is kind of a modification. Now, if you put this at the end of a tank, the average, like 1 or 2 tank aquarist has his fish tank in the living room, and most of us have wives, and most wives do not like stuff that doesn't look good, especially not in the living room.
Right.
And so when you have this foam block at the side of the tank visible, that's not exactly the most attractive part. And it of course takes away from the viewing area in the front. So the corner filter is nothing than a Mattenfilter bent 90 degrees in order to accommodate the sheet. You can still build these approximately in the same size as these, meaning you have still ample filter media. The nice thing about this is you can also drop the heater back here, which you can do in this case as well. Another nice feature, people who have like multiple tanks hooked up to an automatic water changer, you put the overflow back here, which means you have a huge screen in front, so you don't have to worry that guppy babies
fish get caught in there.
Yeah. Or worse, you have a bunch of java moss or ferns or leaves clogging the overflow, and you end up with a wet basement or a wet living room because the tank overflows, because the overflow itself is clogged.
I could see doing that even in a planted tank if you added a little space at the bottom too, to keep the substrate from flowing in when you pulled it out.
I actually don't even bother because I just stick it down and put the substrate in.
So you put the substrate all the way to the bottom, to the back?
No, you keep it in front, either in this or this thing. In this case, I usually say put a spacer down, preventing this from being pushed backwards.
Right.
So easiest way, you put like a PVC pipe, like
that makes sense.
3/4 inch or so is about an inch wide on the outside. If you drop that down straight in the back, it works as a spacer and prevents this from being pushed against the wall, even from the substrate.
Oh, okay.
The nice thing about that is since these jet lifter tubes have no moving parts and they're completely open on the inside, even if there's sand, for example, going in, if you have a regular pump and it gets a little bit of sand grains sucked in, it usually means the lifespan of that pump starts to go way down, because if it starts to suck in sand, it will grind up the rotor on the inside in no time.
Right.
And then you either need to buy continuously new rotors or in the worst case scenario new pumps.
Right.
which cannot happen. Even if they would suck up some sand, nothing happens. It just spits it out in front and end of story. So these things literally have almost no maintenance and very little risk of having any damage.
How often do you pull these out to clean them, would you say?
Well, obviously it depends on what sort of tank you maintain, bioload, type of fish, etc. But in my own system, which are mostly 15 and 30 gallon tanks, a Mattenfilter on average runs about 15 to 18 months before it gets pulled. And even a fully stocked tank with gravel in it, when I see the water level behind here drops, which is kind of handy because you can judge, okay, now it's enough clogged that the flow out cannot be compensated by the flow back through.
Right.
Just pull the sheet out, rinse it out, smack it out. Once it's rinsed, I just grab a little bit of the gravel, pull it away, put the sheet back in, flatten out the gravel, fill the tank back up, and within 2 hours you don't even see you did anything. Because it looks like a mess. I mean, it looks like a bomb hit the place because it's all muddy brown from pulling the sheet.
Right.
And some people freak out. It's like
it'll go away.
It will go away faster. Actually, a lot faster than when you set up a brand new tank.
Yeah.
Because it has so much biology between what's left in the sheet and the substrate that all that turbidity will immediately be captured and absorbed, and then you're good to go. And the other benefit is, I breed a lot of fish, and so you have a batch that grew up in a given tank. You pull them out, and now you refurbish the whole tank. I pull the sheet, and since I have overflows in the back, or actually bulkheads lower down in the back, just put the hose into the tank, stir the gravel a bunch of times, let it run, let the dirty water run down in the back, pull the gravel in front, put the sheet back, the lift tube back, level it out, put whatever decorations I want back in, fill it back up. 2 hours later I can put fish in because there's still enough left in microorganism in the sheet and in the gravel.
Right.
As long as you don't bleach it or otherwise
really crazy,
sanitize it, that you can put fish in 2 hours later.
Or any place.
Right, yeah.
So, but you can buy all this stuff online, right?
Yes.
And where do you go to find that?
Well, simple, SwissTropicals.com. It's a website built by a friend of mine for me. And everything from, I really focus on filters. The food came about because the producer of Extreme is a fish farmer in Florida and a good friend.
Yeah.
And he asked me initially to help develop a pleco food, which I had a few ideas to it, and naturally doing that, he then, well, why don't you already sell stuff anyway, why don't you carry it? And it came from that, and people asked about pumps, because obviously you build filters, and for larger tanks people like pumps, or pumps where it's a kind of thing that happens where you have one part and people like, I would really like to just buy everything in one place. One-stop shopping is what people like.
Yes.
And so you try to accommodate that. There are certain things I don't go into. I don't do weird decorations, or I don't do lighting and other stuff, because there's lots of people that, first of all, more expertise in it than I do.
Yeah.
I mean, I know lights a bit. I had basic physics class
right.
in my PhD curriculum, but I try to surf a niche and not just like copy what everybody else does. I mean, yes, you could sell this or sell that, and where do you start? Do you compete on price? That's bluntly stated stupid.
Yeah.
Everybody does this. Oh, I'm cheaper than everybody else. It's a race to the bottom with no winners.
Right.
Because eventually the manufacturer makes no money, the distributor makes no money, and the customer gets a crappy product, because if nobody makes money, then they have to cheap out. They have to make the parts cheaper, it lasts less. And at the end of the day, the loser is actually the customer, because he buys stuff that doesn't last.
Yeah.
And at that point, cheap stuff that breaks is actually not cheap. You just wasted whatever you spent.
Right, right.
There's no savings in stuff that doesn't work.
You just rented a crappy product for a few weeks.
Exactly, and you paid a fairly high lease.
Yeah.
And that's why I would not. I'm always said I like stuff that's simple and stuff that works. And as kind of states on the website, is like you can always make more money, but you can never make more time.
That's a great way to end it. I really appreciate your time. Thank you so much.
Thank you very much. I really appreciate your visit, John.
All right. What a nice guy. And I did end up buying one of those filters. I got this piece here, which I had planned to put in my 20 long, along with the tube. The tube's kind of interesting. This is very much could be a DIY project for somebody. It looks like just regular PVC pipe. It does have this little attachment here where you can attach the air hose, and underneath, I don't know if you can see it, it's got really fine little holes all through here. Hair goes in through the hose. There's a little tiny hole just right inside there. Goes through these little holes. And it makes the air come through the tube, and the water just pushes the water through. So it's a really, really simple system. He cuts these pieces of foam to fit what you need. At first I was thinking I might just put this long ways, like in one corner or one side of the 20 gallon, and then, you know, cut a little notch and have this go over. And then maybe to season it, what I was going to do is take those sponge filters that I had and put them behind here along with the heater, and just kind of put everything behind a little wall. But I keep thinking more and more about that little corner thing, so I've kind of put off what I was going to do. Initially, I was going to set this filter up in the 20 gallon at the end of this video, but what I think I'm going to do is I'm going to order those corner pieces, and I'm going to attach those corner pieces and see if I can just bend this, stick it in the corner of that tank, and maybe have a little bit more front end area, you know, a little area in the front for aquascaping and other things, and maybe look a little bit less industrial. So that's all I have for you today, folks. Follow your bliss, keep a clean tank, check out SwissTropicals.com. I'll see you soon. Bye-bye.